Haruto was just an ordinary student, living a simple life filled with small dreams. But all of that ended in an instant, when he was killed in a mysterious accident. And when he opened his eyes, he found himself reborn in the body of a poor child named Ryo, in a completely different world. He stays sitting in the same place, wondering whether he's Ryo or Haruto, and he starts remembering memories of Haruto training with a sword, and other memories of Haruto with me. And he's very confused by these strange memories, because they're not his. They're of people and a world that's completely unfamiliar to him. The memories come back again, and he starts talking to himself saying he was sitting on a bus. But then he suddenly stops and asks himself what a bus even means. Because the word sounds very strange to him since the world in his memories is nothing like this one. He says to himself that if this keeps up, he's going to go completely insane. Suddenly, a bunch of thugs enter the place he's in, calling him Ryo. And they start talking to him, saying they're glad he's still alive because they thought he was going to die. One of them tells Ryo that he had a really bad fever and they thought it was going to kill him. They've brought food in a big, heavy sack and put it to the side. The three men are very happy because they moved the cargo and got paid 10 gold coins. And that amount is a lot, especially for such a simple transport job. So one of them says that if they got paid that much, it means the cargo must be suspicious or illegal. They all start laughing. Then they take out the food, and Ryo's stomach starts growling from hunger. One of them calls out to him, and Ryo thinks he's going to give him some food. But the guy tells him to get out because Ryo smells bad and his odor will ruin the taste and smell of the food. So Ryo feels embarrassed, and since he's starving, he goes off to eat from the trees. He starts remembering more about Haruto and says that Haruto lived in a country called Japan. He was 20 years old, in college, and died in a traffic accident. And when he says the phrase, traffic accident, he finds the term strange, since it doesn't exist in his world. He says he doesn't understand it, but then corrects himself and says he does understand it, not as Ryo from Beltrum Kingdom, but as Haruto from Japan. Then Ryo settles it in his mind and says he's not Haruto, his name is Ryo, and he lives in this slum to avenge his mother. He remembers asking his mom why they both have black hair unlike everyone else. She tells him it's because they're not from this country and came from a very far away land. Then Ryo asks her if everyone in that country has black hair, and she answers that everyone there does, even his grandmother and grandfather. So Ryo says that one day, he wants to meet his grandma and grandpa. She promises him that when he grows up, she'll take him to those lands, and the place is called Yagumo. Then Ryo remembers his mother's final moments, and it's clear she was murdered. Suddenly, some people dressed in white robes enter. Some of them are girls around his age, and they look disgusted by his smell, worried he might give them a disease. He doesn't know who these people are. Then the older woman asks him if he saw a girl with light purple hair around his age. He replies that he didn't, so they accuse him of lying and tell him it's better to tell the truth. Then a girl named Celia speaks and says he won't answer them like that. She walks up to Ryo, apologizes, and tells him her name is Celia. She then asks him his name. He replies, Ryo, and she finds the name strange. So he tells her it's a weird name because his mom and dad were immigrants. So she understands that his black hair is also because he's an immigrant. She's about to ask him again about the girl with purple hair, but he tells her that he really doesn't know anything about her. So she believes him and asks him if this area is the slums, and whether the slums are large. He asks her why she's asking, and Celia says it's because she and the people with her are going to search for the girl with purple hair there. So Ryo tells her they shouldn't go, because it's not a place they should be in wearing such fancy clothes. She then asks him what kind of clothes women usually wear there. So Ryo tells her that poor people's clothes are usually torn and ragged. The older woman says that in that case, they should go change first and then come back. But the two younger girls object, saying if they do that, they won't be able to save her in time. The older woman replies that what they're doing isn't official and they shouldn't cause any more trouble. So the girls agree and decide to go change first. Then the older woman asks Celia to search for any magical reaction in the area first. Celia casts a spell over the whole area, and there's only one reaction. Everyone is shocked to find out that the magical response is coming from Ryo. Celia explains that Ryo is overflowing with magical energy and has the ability to use magic. The younger girls are surprised that a poor orphan like him has magical powers, and because of Celia's spell, magic starts glowing from him, and Ryo is really surprised. Then Celia points out a place to the people with her and says the girl must be over there, even though there's no clear proof for what she says. Then Celia turns to Ryo again and gives him a pouch full of silver coins, thanks him, and says goodbye. Ryo opens the pouch and finds it full of large silver coins. He gets very happy, hides the pouch in his chest, and runs back home. As soon as he enters the house, someone jumps at him and stabs him in the chest with a dagger, but the pouch blocks the dagger and gives Ryo a second chance at life. Ryo looks around and discovers that the masked man who attacked him killed all the men who were in the house. Then the masked man comes closer and raises his dagger, ready to kill him, but suddenly a spirit appears to Ryo in the form of a girl and tells him that she'll teach him about the aura, and also teach him how to use his magical power to survive. The spirit says that first, he has to concentrate hard, and then tells him to use the light coming from his body to enhance his physical strength. And just as the masked man is about to kill Rio suddenly lands a blow that's incredibly powerful. The masked man also knows how to use physical enhancement magic, and he attacks Rio, but Rio is incredibly strong and defeats him with ease. Then just as Rio starts to relax, the heavy sack that the thugs brought in earlier when he woke up begins to move. Rio decides to open the sack, already knowing what he'll find inside. And sure enough, when he opens the sack, he finds a little girl with purple hair, around his age. He unties the ropes from her. The girl is very scared and begs him to take her to the castle. She starts rambling, saying that if he tells her father that he saved her, he'll get a big reward. Then she faints from fear, and Rio doesn't understand anything she just said. But Rio figures out that this must be the girl that Celia and the others were looking for. So Rio carries the girl on his back and heads off to find Celia and her group to hand her over to them. As he gets closer to them, Christina runs up to him and suddenly slaps him hard across the face. She starts yelling at him, accusing him of lying when he said he didn't know the girl with purple hair. Then she takes the little girl he's carrying. Her name is Flora, and Christina starts asking her if she's okay, then tells the older woman to take care of her. She continues screaming and yelling at Rio, saying, "Why did you kidnap my little sister?" Rio tries to defend himself, saying he didn't kidnap her, he just found her. But Christina doesn't give him a chance to explain or tell the truth. Christina is furious at him, thinking he's the one who kidnapped her sister, so she grabs him by the collar and keeps yelling at him. Rio tries to remove her hands, but the moment he touches Christina, the older woman in their group attacks him and threatens him with a sword. Christina says she'll accuse him of harming the royal family, but the female guard with them tells her that Rio didn't know she was from the royal family, so they need to take him to the castle and investigate there. But Rio refuses to go to the castle, so the guard tells him it's not a request, it's an order. Rio says all he did was save her, and they could simply ask her once she wakes up. The guard replies that's not enough for them, and they want to hear all the details directly from him. So Rio agrees and goes with them, and the guard promises him that if he's innocent, they'll release him immediately. Then the royal guards arrive at the scene and find the masked man still alive, so they arrest him to interrogate him. But someone in the crowd pulls something from his pocket and breaks it, and the masked man dies instantly. Although Rio agreed to go with them to the castle just to tell them what happened until the princess wakes up, what actually happens is they arrest him and hang him by his hands from the ceiling. There, the deputy captain of the royal knights, named Charles, begins interrogating him, but it's not a gentle interrogation. He tortures and beats him severely to make him confess that he kidnapped the second princess, Flora. Meanwhile, up in the castle, Flora finally wakes up and tells them everything that happened, that Rio helped her, he didn't kidnap her, and she won't let anyone hurt him because he's the reason she made it back. She orders her guard to make the necessary arrangements to release him from the castle immediately. But by the time Celia and Vanessa come down to get Rio, Charles has already tortured him badly and hasn't left a single part of his body unharmed. He's almost dead. When the soldiers try to stop Charles, he tells them they're the royal guards who were responsible for escorting the princess, and they have to redeem their reputation or they'll be punished. Then Celia and Vanessa burst in and tell him to stop what he's doing immediately, and that the investigation should have been conducted politely just like they promised Rio. Charles defends himself, saying the boy might be involved in Princess Flora's kidnapping. But Vanessa tells him that Princess Flora woke up and said herself that she owes her life to Rio and that he saved her. Charles is shocked and very upset that the princess woke up because now he can't salvage his reputation as a royal knight. Then Celia starts apologizing to Rio, but he's unconscious, and she begins healing his injuries with magic. When Rio wakes up, he finds himself in a room with Celia beside him. She thanks the heavens the moment he opens his eyes and asks if he's okay and if anything hurts. Rio asks where he is, and Celia replies that he's in the royal castle and apologizes for all the horrible things he went through because of them. Rio asks if she was the one who healed him. Celia says she's studying magic at Beltrum Royal Academy, reintroduces herself as Celia, and asks if he remembers her. At first, Rio doesn't remember her, but then he quickly recalls and sincerely thanks her for treating him. Celia then tells him that the king wants to meet him to thank him for saving the second princess, Flora. When Rio hears about the meeting, he asks Celia to teach him the proper etiquette needed to meet the king. Celia is surprised by the request, but Rio says he can't go meet the king while being so ignorant. She agrees right away, realizing how smart he is. Then we see the king, the queen, Christina, and Flora sitting on the throne. The door opens, and Rio walks in, with his hair cut, wearing new clothes, and taught royal etiquette. He looks like a completely different person. The king thanks Rio for saving the second princess, Flora, and decides to reward him by allowing him to enroll in the Royal Primary Academy for free on a scholarship. The next day, Celia takes him to the academy and asks if he knows how to read and write. He replies that he doesn't at all, so Celia tells him not to worry about that because she'll personally give him lessons and teach him. Before Celia takes Rio into his classroom, she warns him that only the upper class attend this academy, so the students might give him a hard time at first. Rio tells her not to worry and that he knows his place very well. When Rio enters the class, all the students start talking badly about him and laughing, saying that he's an orphan and poor. Then Rio introduces himself and says that thanks to the king, he was able to enter the academy to study, and that even though he lacks a lot, he hopes they treat him well. One of the students mocks him and says he speaks like a servant. Rio heads to his seat and notices Christina is in the same class. As soon as she sees him, she turns her face the other way. Celia starts teaching them, and it's a math lesson. She writes a lot of problems on the board and tells them to copy and solve them in their notebooks. It's clear the problems are a bit tough. Rio tries to copy them, but Celia tells him not to push himself too hard since it's only his first day. The students in his class laugh at him and say it looks like he doesn't even know how to read or write. After that, Rio goes to Celia's office for his reading and writing lesson as agreed. He sees a paper stuck to the door but can't read it. So Rio knocks on the door, and Celia comes out yelling, asking who's knocking. Can't they read? But then she sees Rio in front of her and apologizes. She seems to have forgotten why Rio is here, so he reminds her that she promised to teach him reading and writing. Celia lets him in, but Rio is shocked by how messy her office is, books everywhere, and not even a place to sit. Celia gets really embarrassed and starts saying she's usually a lot more organized, and that she'll clear a space for him right away. Rio notices there are a lot of really difficult books, and he tells her she looks way too young to be a teacher. Celia tells Rio that she's only 12 years old, and Rio is very surprised. Celia continues, saying that she's supposed to be in primary school like him, but she skipped several years because she was smart and graduated from secondary school. Rio tells her she must be a genius. Celia starts teaching Rio, and he learns quickly, solving all the problems correctly. Celia is amazed that he could solve them so fast and all in his head. Rio tells her the problems were just simple multiplication and division, and he just needed to learn the numbers. Celia tells Rio that the problems are actually not easy at all, and the only student in the class who can solve them is Princess Christina. Rio tells himself she's right, these problems aren't easy for kids his age, but he can solve them because he was once Haruto, and Haruto was in college, so these were simple for him. Celia asks him where he learned math. Rio tells her his late mother taught him, so she says his mother must have been educated. But Rio tells her she was also kind and loving, and he looks sad. Celia prepares tea for Rio, and he really likes it. She asks him how he feels about his first day at school and whether he faced any problems. Rio remembers how the students in his class mocked him, but he tells Celia that nothing bothered him. Celia asks him to tell her if anything ever does. Rio feels encouraged and asks her to recommend children's books so he can learn the letters, and Celia does help him. Later, during combat class, everyone is paired up to train, except Rio, who trains alone. The instructor notices Rio's unique movements and asks him to attack him. Rio starts remembering Haruto's sword training from his previous life and holds the sword in the same way, a way that seems very strange to people in this world. Rio attacks the instructor while remembering Haruto's teacher's advice. The instructor is impressed by Rio's skills and tells him he has what it takes to be a knight. But Rio apologizes and says he's not interested in becoming a knight. All the students are shocked. How could anyone in their right mind refuse to become a knight? Rio spends all his time in the library. Celia comes to him and says it looks like he's studying really hard. Rio says that the term end exams are close and he has to study. But Celia tells him there's no need to worry about grades since he joined the academy late. Rio replies that he won't worry but he'll still give it his all. During the exams, it's clear everyone is struggling except for Rio, who answers everything quickly and easily. One day, while Rio is in the academy yard, he remembers Michan, how he left her when they were kids, and how when they grew up and saw each other, she pretended not to notice him. Rio stands there while all the students talk badly about him, how someone poor like that got into the academy. Rio returns to his room and remembers more about how Haruto used to love her. Rio is deeply hurt just from remembering these things. He tells himself that his name is Rio, not Haruto, and that he'll live on and do everything he can to become strong. When the exam results are announced, everyone is shocked to see Rio is ranked first in his class. He even surpassed Princess Christina. One student named Alphonse is very upset and starts accusing Rio of cheating, saying there's no way someone from the commoners could beat even Princess Christina, and that he must have used some trick to fool everyone. But Rio defends himself and says he didn't do anything wrong. Alphonse keeps accusing and yelling until Roanna, Christina's friend and the one ranked third after Rio and Christina, cuts him off, saying noble jealousy is ugly. She asks him if he has any proof that Rio cheated. Christina joins in and says those claims would damage the academy's reputation. Then Celia arrives and tells everyone the results are fair, and that Rio got first place because he studied hard. She's a witness to that. Alphonse is annoyed by Celia and leaves. Rio tries to thank Roanna, but she says there's no need for thanks and that she didn't do it for him. She also tells him he won't beat her next time, meaning in exam scores. Rio and Celia go to her office, and she congratulates him on placing first. Even so, she tells him she's a little worried because students are constantly trying to find faults in him. Rio tells her he's used to it now and it doesn't affect him anymore. Rio asks her if she went through a similar experience since she was a genius. She tells him that some nobles did bother her back then, but she managed to ignore them all and says she had friends at the time, so she wasn't entirely alone. Rio tells her that he'll also be fine because he has a friend like Celia Sensei, and he says that if he ever faces a problem, He wants her to give him advice as a friend and teacher. Celia replies and tells him that she'll stand by him against the bullying he's facing. After that, 5 years pass and now it's the year 996 of the Holy Era. The instructor is selecting a group of students to represent the Academy in the Royal Knights exhibition. The teacher selects 3 students, Alphonse, Rio, and another student. And all the other students are upset about how the teacher could pick someone from the commoners to represent them in such an important event, saying it's a disgrace to the Academy. Alphonse adds that Rio can't even use magic, but the teacher says the decision is final and there are no objections. Later, Rio goes to Celia's office and tells her what happened, and she says the knights might choose him to become a knight even before he graduates. But Rio says he has no intention of becoming a knight. Then Celia sips the tea and says the tea Rio makes is excellent. Rio replies that he learned this method from a book, while he's tidying up her office as they talk. Celia asks Rio, if you don't want to become a knight, what will you do after graduation? Rio says he's going on a journey because there's a place he's always wanted to visit. Celia is surprised and asks him if that means he'll leave the country. Rio says it will be difficult for him to keep living here. At that point, Celia offers him a job at her lab and says she needs him. At the very least, he tidies the place, makes delicious tea, and helps her balance her life with her research. She's still speaking when Rio interrupts her and says he truly appreciates her offer to help, but sooner or later they'll start talking about her marriage, and it wouldn't be good for her to have a commoner working in her research lab. Celia asks Rio, what country do you want to visit? Rio replies that he wants to visit the homeland of his parents, a place called Yagumo, and he remembers his mother's promise to take him there when he grows up. In the Knights exhibition, each of the 3 selected students from the Academy is supposed to fight against a member of the Royal Knights, and the judge is a Royal Knight named Alfred. Since Rio is first in his class, he's the first one to step into the duel. But Alphonse tries to provoke him before he goes out, though Rio isn't affected and heads to the arena. Celia is cheering for him from the stands. The surprise is that Rio's opponent from the Royal Guard is Charles, the same Charles who tortured Rio when they suspected him of kidnapping the princess. Charles also tries to provoke Rio, but Rio stays perfectly calm. Charles is surprised by the way Rio is standing and also wonders why Rio isn't even wearing armor. He thinks to himself that Rio must be mocking him. Charles launches a very aggressive attack on Rio, but Rio keeps blocking calmly. Charles thinks to himself that he was punished and demoted because of Rio and that he'll never forget that humiliation. Charles fights very seriously, even though he's supposed to go easy since Rio is just a student. But Rio is strong and manages to knock the sword out of Charles's hand and put a blade to his neck. Charles tries to complain like a child, saying he loosened his defense, and that's why Rio won. But Alfred, the judge, yells at him and says a loss is a loss, and he must accept it with respect since he's a royal knight. Charles does admit his defeat, and they announce Rio as the winner. Because Rio fought so well, he catches the attention of Alfred, the judge, who becomes interested in knowing what Rio plans to do in the future. Later, we see Charles sitting at night with the ambassador of the Proxia Empire, and he starts insulting Rio. But the ambassador humors him and says he probably let Rio win because he's just a kid. The ambassador seems interested in learning more about Rio from Charles, and Charles tells him he first met Rio when he was investigating him in the case of Princess Flora's kidnapping, and we find out that this ambassador is somehow linked to that kidnapping incident. One day, Celia sees Rio walking fast and follows him, only to find a girl confessing to him that she likes him. But it seems Celia isn't happy about that at all. Celia is sitting in her office reviewing the post-graduation plans of the final year students, and Rio is the only one who hasn't written anything in the plans section. Celia is giving them a magic lesson and explaining how to use magic formulas by channeling aura into them. She says that today they'll be working on the lightning formula to deepen their understanding of magical power control. Alphonse tells her that anyone in the class can use lightning magic because it's a low-level spell. Then he doesn't miss the chance to pick on Rio, saying, "Wait, my bad. There's someone here who can't use magic at all." Celia asks Alphonse to cast lightning magic for her. Alphonse and his friend do the formula, and it works, but Celia tells them that based on the level they did it at, she can't really say they've mastered it. She explains to them that there are higher levels of control in magic formulas and then demonstrates by casting lightning magic herself, controlling multiple formulas at the same time, and everyone is amazed. Rio is sitting and thinking to himself that it's true he can't create magic formulas like they can, but he knows how to recreate magical techniques by mimicking the flow of magical energy. As usual, Rio is subjected to bullying by the noble students at the academy, but the second princess, Flora, is really upset about what's happening, especially since they always accuse him of terrible things with no proof. But Princess Christina tells Flora not to interfere because stepping in wouldn't help anyone. She also says Rio knows this and always handles things on his own without making a big deal. But Flora still feels guilty because she hasn't yet repaid him for saving her back then. Later on, the final year students have a military field training exercise in the forest. Flora is very nervous, so Rowena tries to calm her and says that it's a team competition and that they've already cleared the forest of dangerous monsters. Alphonse is the team leader and explains that they're supposed to retreat from the battlefield in their units, and that the operation ends at sunset. He also says that performing well in this training will greatly affect their final scores. He says they might be able to finish the exercise before noon. Roanna responds that it'll be difficult because they're in a dense mountainous area, but Alphonse tells her not to worry about it because he has a shortcut map he got from soldiers working under Stuart. Those soldiers know the area well, and Stuart had them draw the shortcut and gave it to Alphonse. Roanna doesn't like this and says it's basically cheating, but Christina says Alphonse is the unit leader and it's up to him to decide how things go. Stuart tells Rio that he's useless, and on top of that, he's a burden because he can't use magic, so they decide to make him carry all the gear by himself. Rio agrees and actually goes to carry all the equipment alone, but Flora sees this as unfair and offers to help him carry the gear. Rio thanks her for her concern but politely declines and walks behind them. Flora talks to Christina, saying that what's happening to Rio is really unjust. Why should he have to carry everything on his own? Suddenly, goblin monsters appear, but Alphonse quickly arranges the formation so they can defeat the goblins. He orders 3 students in the front to use magic formulas to enhance their physical strength. The students attack the goblins and defeat them easily. Stuart is full of himself and says they need to fight stronger monsters. Alphonse praises Stuart and says he can rely on him, unlike Rio. He looks at him and finds Rio staring off into the distance. Alphonse yells at him and tells him not to zone out. We find out that the ambassador had been following the group, watching them, and Rio was looking into the distance because he noticed someone was observing them. The ambassador is impressed with Rio, surprised that anyone could notice him from that distance. He says Rio is an extraordinary boy and that he wants to test him to find out his true abilities. The group successfully makes it out of the forest, but just as they're about to celebrate, they suddenly find themselves in front of a steep cliff instead of a path leading to their target. They become very anxious and realize the map was wrong. Christina asks Alphonse what they should do now. Before Alphonse can respond to the princess, they are suddenly attacked by orc monsters. Roanna reacts quickly and orders everyone to use defense. Alphonse resumes command and tells them to raise their shields and spears. But Stuart is injured in the leg and crashes into Princess Flora, who is standing right on the edge of the cliff. So the princess falls off. But Rio notices this and jumps off the cliff bravely and quickly to save her. He uses his strength to push her back up while falling himself. Thanks to Rio's power, the princess soars upward and returns to the top of the cliff. But the orcs are still attacking the group. Alphonse splits the group into 2. The front line uses shields to defend, and the rear uses offensive magic against the orcs. He orders Roanna to heal the injured students. They manage to defeat the orcs after Princess Christina casts a powerful magic formula. Meanwhile, Rio is down below, hearing them laugh and celebrate that they were able to defeat the orcs. Rio considers going back but hesitates. He's afraid that if he returns without a single injury after falling off a cliff, they might suspect him. He says he saved her without thinking about what would happen after. He also says that his power isn't magic, nor are they magical techniques. He doesn't even know exactly what his power is, but it makes him incredibly strong, and he can even fly. He remembers the girl who appeared to him when he discovered this power for the first time, during the fight with the man who kidnapped the princess. Rio snaps out of his thoughts when he hears them arguing above. They're accusing Stuart of pushing the princess off the cliff to kill her, but Stuart says someone pushed him, and that's why he hit the princess and she fell. He says he's a victim too and looks for someone else to blame. He finds no one but Rio. So Stuart tells them that Rio is responsible, and he lies, saying that Rio panicked when the monsters attacked and pushed him while he was injured, which caused him to crash into Flora. Alphonse keeps the lie going and says that Rio only saved Flora because he was afraid they'd accuse him of trying to kill a member of the royal family, but unfortunately, he fell off the cliff. But Flora tries to defend Rio and says he was trying to save her life, but Stuart gets all the students to say that Rio really did it, and they all wrongly support the accusation. Rio, down below, hears everything they're saying and realizes he's in big trouble. He feels sad because he had planned not to leave the academy until he graduated, but now he'll have to escape and leave them behind. Up above, Christina silences everyone and orders Alphonse to take action because this isn't the time for such talk. Alphonse quickly starts looking for a way out of the forest, but Flora stops them and says they have to search for Rio. Alphonse tells her that Rio already got what he deserved when he fell off the cliff. Flora insists on searching for him and says she'll go even if she has to go alone. But Roanna and Christina try to calm her down and tell her they'll send a search party to find him when they return. Suddenly, they hear the roar of a nearby monster, and a huge, powerful beast attacks them. They try to defeat the monster using the same strategy they used against the orcs, but they fail and some students are injured. Alphonse orders the group to retreat and flee. Christina wants to search for Flora because she suddenly disappeared, but Roanna tells her Flora must have run off with the other students and says they need to escape too. But in reality, Flora didn't escape. She stayed behind to heal an injured student using magic. The monster finds her and is just about to attack and kill her, when suddenly Rio appears and slices off the monster's arm with his sword. He tells Flora to take the student and get away quickly, then begins fighting the monster. The beast is very fast and strong, and Rio says to himself that he doesn't want to die here and blames himself for coming back to save her again. Flora is amazed at how skilled and powerful he is in combat. Rio finds the monster's weak point, cuts its neck, and defeats it. Christina and Roanna arrive at Flora's side, very worried about her, but they don't see Rio, so he quietly walks away. The ambassador had witnessed the whole battle and says it was entertaining. He means that Ryo is much stronger than he expected. He watches Ryo running through the forest and says he must be from Yagumo because of his black hair, and adds that must be the reason he knows how to use spirit arts. Then the ambassador flies off. Celia is at school heading to the principal's office. Just as she's about to knock, she hears people inside talking about Ryo, so she listens in secretly. They say that Ryo disappeared, and she realizes that Stuart and his father accused Ryo of trying to kill the princess, and that the principal went along with it and agreed to make Ryo the one responsible for the incident. That night, Celia is sitting in her office, anxious. Suddenly she hears a sound. It's Ryo coming to say goodbye. Celia runs to him and starts asking if he's okay, if he's hurt, or if anything's causing him pain. But Ryo assures her he's fine, and they sit together as he tells her everything from start to finish. He tells her he can't even deny the accusations because he's not rich and not from a noble family. Celia apologizes that she can't help him in any way and says she really hoped to see him graduate from the academy. But Ryo tells her that he's glad he met her, and that her presence beside him is what helped him endure all the bullying he went through. Celia asks him if he's planning to travel to Yagumo like he said before. He says yes, he'll go there, and that he'll send her letters under a pseudonym. The name will be Haruto. Celia says goodbye to Ryo and tells him she'll wait for his letters, and she'll wait for him too, because she's sure they'll meet again. Ryo sets off on his journey to the land of Yagumo. Ryo travels through the forest, running very fast thanks to his power, and along the way, he avoids any monsters he encounters. After 3 days, he sends his first letter to Celia, telling her that he left the royal capital 3 days ago and has now reached a neighboring kingdom called Galark, where he entered a city named Trade City. He says the first thing he did in the city was check for his face among the wanted posters, but he was relieved when he didn't find his name or picture. After that, he goes to buy food for his journey. He reassures Celia that he's okay and tells her about the city, how lively and energetic it is, and how the food there is plentiful and delicious. He says he'll be able to get all the supplies he needs for travel quickly, which will put his mind at ease. While Ryo is walking through the city, he feels like someone is watching him. But when he looks back, he sees no one, so he tells himself his nerves are just tense these days and continues heading off to buy his travel supplies. But in reality, a young girl really was watching him. As Ryo continues walking through the city, he hears a man calling from a food cart saying he's serving pasta for just 8 Nasiya coins. Ryo is really surprised they even know about pasta in this world. Ryo asks the seller about it, and the seller realizes he's not from around here since he doesn't know pasta. He says that pasta was invented by Lizelot-sama, who is the governor of Amon City. He says Lizelot created something called macarona using wheat, and pasta is a kind of macarona. Ryo says it's the first time he's seen pasta in this world, and also the first time he's even heard the word macarona. Ryo is very hungry and really misses pasta, so he orders a dish of pasta. The food is incredibly tasty and brings back Haruto's memories of eating pasta too. He wonders to himself if this Lizelot might also be someone who came from Haruto's world. Then Ryo asks the seller where he can buy a large amount of macarona and pasta. He says it's perfect food to take on trips, especially since it tastes good. The merchant tells him to go to the Rika Trading Guild, saying he'll find everything he needs there, but that there will be a long line to wait in. As Ryo walks, he keeps hearing the names of foods from Haruto's world. He finally reaches the guild, where he's welcomed by a receptionist named Latte. She tells him that weapons are not allowed inside the guild and asks him to leave his sword at the reception and pick it up when he leaves. Latte notices Ryo's black hair, and it's clear that black hair is uncommon in Ryo's world. Latte helps Ryo shop for everything he needs. He buys large amounts of barley and pasta. Latte also prepares cooking tools and spices for him, packing everything in a backpack so Ryo can carry it. But she warns him that the bag will be heavy. Ryo says he's stronger than he looks. She asks him if he likes black tea, and Ryo remembers Celia and says he's used to it because his friend likes it. Latte asks him if he can identify the type of tea he drinks. He tells her the flavor is Liss tea, and says they use good quality tea. Latte is very happy that he was able to identify the tea and offers to send any letters for him if he wants. So Ryo writes a letter to Celia saying he's bought everything he needs, and that once he leaves the Strahl region, he won't be able to send her any more letters. But he asks her not to worry about him and says that as long as there's no news from him, it means he's safe. Ryo hands the letter to Latte, says goodbye, and leaves. Another employee tells Latte that the boy seems really mysterious, but doesn't call her Latte. She calls her Lizelot-sama, so we find out that Latte is actually Lizelot-sama, the governor of the city. Then Ryo heads into the forest to continue his journey. He runs fast, but suddenly sees a young girl lying on the ground. He stops to check on her and help her, but the girl actually lured him into a trap and stabs him in the arm with poison that makes him faint. But Ryo quickly moves away from her. She pulls the hood off her head, and it's revealed that she's a beastkin, part animal, part human. She pulls a dagger from her pocket and says she's going to kill him. But Ryo tells himself that he needs to deal with the poison first before fighting her, and he successfully manages to heal himself. He tells the girl he won't let her kill him. The girl is shocked that he was able to cure himself, but attacks him again with the dagger. They keep attacking and blocking each other until the girl uses body enhancement magic on herself. Ryo gets worried because she's already fast and strong, and if she uses magic, she'll become even stronger. But Rio is able to match her speed. The girl is surprised. How can a human be that fast? Rio notices that while she's strong, she only focuses on her dagger. So he decides to throw away his weapon and fight her hand-to-hand using martial arts. He actually manages to defeat her. Once he catches her, she can't escape and starts crying hysterically like a little kid. She won't stop, so Rio has to use his power to make her lose consciousness. Then he ties her up well and removes all the weapons she had. He notices a slave collar around her neck, which means she's under someone else's command. He remembers reading in a magic book how to remove it, and he actually does remove the collar. But the girl is having a nightmare, and we discover that she's the same girl who was with Haruto during the bus accident. She died and woke up to find herself in the body of a beastkin slave owned by the Stewart family, and Stewart treats her terribly. When she wakes up, she finds Rio in front of her. She tries to break free, but Rio tells her she must know by now that she can't, so she'd better stop. The girl asks him if he's going to kill her. Rio replies that it depends on whether she'll answer his questions or not. First, he shows her the slave collar and tells her that now she can answer freely. The girl is so happy she starts crying, realizing the collar is gone. Rio asks her who sent her, but she says she doesn't know his name or his family name, but she knows someone in the family named Stewart. Rio asks her if Stewart is human or beastkin, and the girl tells him he's human. Rio realizes that Stewart's father sent the girl after him to kill him and get rid of him, so real rumors wouldn't spread about what really happened. He asks her if the man who sent her also sent anyone else to kill him, but the girl says she doesn't know, and Rio tells himself he's sure they didn't send anyone else. Then Rio asks her the final question: does she still want to kill him? The girl strongly denies it and says she doesn't want to kill him at all. So Rio unties the rope, gives her back all her belongings, and tells her not to come back and to run away somewhere since the slave collar is gone now. He tells her to go anywhere except Strahl because she'd be treated as a slave there. He tells her to head east. There she'll find cities where beastkin and demi-humans live. He warns her not to attack him again, because next time he won't show any mercy. He walks away and leaves her, but the girl keeps following him, walking right behind him. Eventually, Rio gets annoyed and asks her if there's something she wants from him. She tells him she wants to go there with him because she's scared to travel alone. Rio speaks coldly and tells her he hasn't forgiven her for trying to kill him. The girl gets scared and apologizes to him. Rio replies that he'll never be able to trust her, so the girl gives him the collar and tells him he can put it back on her neck. She doesn't mind at all. Rio gets upset and yells at her, asking why she brought it with her in the first place and if she didn't hate wearing it. The girl starts crying and says she hates being alone even more because it makes her feel afraid. He feels bad for her and tells her to throw the collar away and just follow him if she wants to. Then he asks for her name, and she tells him it's Latifa. Later, they stop walking to rest and eat. Rio prepares a sandwich for her. Latifa really likes the sandwich and starts crying while eating it super fast. Rio tells her she can eat slowly, no one's going to steal it from her. She tells him that they used to give her animal food every day, so Rio pats her gently to comfort her. Rio and Latifa keep walking until they cross the border and start camping. Latifa apologizes to Rio for slowing him down, but he tells her not to worry about it at all. Rio's letter reaches Celia, and she's very happy to hear from him. She hopes he's doing well, wherever he may be. At night, Rio cooks pasta so he and Latifa can eat together. Latifa gets really excited and says she's so happy to be eating spaghetti. Rio is surprised that she knows the word spaghetti, and asks her if she's eaten that dish before. She tells him she had it a long time ago. Rio thinks to himself that she might also be from Haruto's world. That night, Latifa is sleeping and having a nightmare. She keeps calling out to her dad, mom, and brother, saying she wants to go back to their home in Tokyo. Rio hears her and confirms that she really is from Haruto's world. He gently pats her until she calms down and falls asleep peacefully. The next morning, she wakes up before him and says to herself that he looks like the boy who was on the bus with her before the accident. When Rio wakes up, Latifa asks him if she can call him Oniai-san, which means big brother. Rio agrees, knowing she's just a little girl and has been through a lot finding herself in this body in this world. Rio and Latifa continue their journey, traveling through snow, volcanic lands, forests, and mountains. One day, they come across a very large tree. Rio asks her if she can see it, but Latifa says she can't. So Rio concludes that someone has hidden it with magic to keep it from being seen. Rio and Latifa camp out in the forest. That night, a very large wolf appears in front of Rio. Latifa starts having nightmares while sleeping, so Rio uses his power to let her sleep deeply without any bad dreams. After that, he turns around and finds a giant wolf standing behind him, and suddenly the wolf releases a mist that makes Rio unable to see anything. Rio starts asking himself whether this wolf is a beastkin or not, but he can't see and doesn't know what to do. Then a beastkin girl named Yuzuma attacks him. Several other beastkins start attacking him too, so Rio uses spirit arts to detect the aura in the area and figure out how many of them are fighting him. Then Rio speaks to them and asks if they're beastkin, and says he only wants to talk without fighting. Yuzuma says humans aren't to be trusted, but another beastkin girl says they should at least hear what he has to say and find out his intentions. Yuzuma says they still need to be cautious, so she orders two other beastkin girls, Orphea and Alma, to search the area thoroughly. Then a girl named Sarah approaches him and says they'll accept his offer, but it'd be better if he didn't use insulting terms like half-breeds when referring to them. Rio apologizes and says he didn't mean it that way at all. He thanks her for agreeing to talk to him and introduces himself, saying his name is Rio. At that moment, Orphea and Alma find Latifa and tell Sarah that there's a child of their race with him and that he used spirit arts to put her to sleep. Yuzuma doesn't wait. She attacks him immediately. Sarah yells at her, saying she didn't give her any order to attack. But Yuzuma says Rio is a thief and kidnapped one of their people. Rio uses spirit arts to heal the wound Yuzuma caused him, but she attacks again. Rio tries to explain the situation, but Orphea tells him they're going to arrest him for kidnapping one of their kind. Even as Rio is saying he actually brought her so she could live with them, Yuzuma attacks him again and says she'll never trust the words of a wicked human. They all attack him together and manage to knock him unconscious. While unconscious, Rio sees the same girl who appears and disappears suddenly, calling him Haruto. Haruto asks her who she is. The girl responds saying she doesn't know who she is. Rio tells her she knows who he is though. He asks her how she knows him, and the spirit says she knows him because she's connected to him, Haruto. She tells him she belongs to him alone. Rio asks her what she means, but she says they don't have time and that he'll have sweet dreams until he wakes up. Then the spirit disappears, and Rio hears Michan's voice calling to him, telling him to wake up. Rio keeps calling out to me until he wakes up for real. Sitting next to him is a beastkin girl waiting for him to wake up. Rio wakes up confused, not recognizing the girl or the place, and wonders why he's tied up. Suddenly Latifa rushes in and hugs him, crying. Rio asks her why she's crying, and Latifa says it's because she thought he disappeared and left her. She begs him not to ever leave her again. Then Yuzuma, Sarah, Alma, and Orphea come in, and Latifa glares at them with hatred because they hurt Rio and put shackles on him. An old woman named Ursula enters the room. As soon as she walks in, she apologizes to Rio and asks him to tell her the story of Latifa and how they met. But Latifa yells out, asking who did this to Rio. Yuzuma bows her head and apologizes for what she did. Then Alma, Sarah, and Orphea also bow and apologize, but Rio tells them the misunderstanding has been cleared, so there's no need for apologies. Ursula says Yuzuma will be held responsible for her reckless actions, and not just her. All four of them will be held accountable for what they did. She orders Orphea to remove Rio's restraints immediately and tells him that tomorrow the village elders will gather to formally apologize to him. She also apologizes for putting him in such a humble room and says it's the best they could offer at the time. She hopes he can rest well in it and apologizes once more before leaving. The next day, Ursula takes Rio and they go up a large tree. The tree has stairs and houses built into it, and from there, Rio can see the same tree he asked Latifa about earlier. Ursula tells him that this is the world tree, and it's home to a great spirit named Dryas. Rio tells Ursula that he came here specifically because he wanted to reach that tree. Ursula says there's an illusion barrier made from spirit arts around the tree, and only those who can use spirit arts really well are able to see it. She asks Rio if he learned spirit arts from a master. Rio says he taught himself. Ursula replies that he must have great talent. Then, Rio goes to the meeting where two elders are waiting for him. One is a high elf and the other is a dwarf. The elf begins speaking and says he'll use the human language so Rio can understand him. The elder introduces himself, saying he's one of the three sages and that he's responsible for the spirit folk living in the village. His name is Shildora. He also introduces Ursula and the dwarf named Dominic. Rio says he's pleased to meet them and introduces himself respectfully and formally. Shildora apologizes to Rio for them capturing him and thanks him for saving Latifa. Rio says there's no need to apologize because he entered their territory without thinking. The three elders say they'd like to offer him a service as a token of gratitude and ask him to request whatever he wants since, being from a different race, they wouldn't know what he might need. Rio hesitates for a moment, then asks if they would allow Latifa to live with them. Ursula replies that this should have been their request to him. They're the ones who should be bowing and asking him to let Latifa stay with them. They ask him to make a request for himself personally. Rio feels a bit embarrassed and says that Latifa is attached to him, and just as he continues, Ursula tells him there's no need to say more and offers him a place to live with them in the village. She tells him that all the elders agree he should stay in the village. The dwarf says he's very impressed with Rio's manners. Shildora adds that the three of them will make sure that living in the village won't cause him any discomfort, and tells him that if there's ever anything he needs, he shouldn't hesitate to ask. Rio tells them that while he's living in the village, he wants to learn spirit arts and anything related to daily life. Shildora tells him not to worry about that, he'll be assigned a skilled spirit arts teacher. Suddenly, they hear a girl's voice in the room saying she wants to join in and speak too. Rio doesn't know where the voice is coming from, and then suddenly a girl with green hair appears next to him. Ursula tells him that this is Dryas, the great spirit who lives in the world tree. Suddenly, Dryas gets closer to him and says she senses the presence of a spirit inside him. She wonders if it's a hidden spirit, and that's why its presence is concealed. Rio is very surprised. Dryas asks him if he knows anything about that spirit, but Rio tells her he doesn't know anything. She tells him she believes he's made a contract with this spirit, but Rio says he doesn't remember ever making a contract with any spirit. Dryas tells him that if he made a spirit contract, he wouldn't be able to use magic. Then Rio remembers that he actually can't use magic. Dryas tells him that she's going to examine him thoroughly to identify the nature of the spirit inside him. She says there's a huge amount of aura inside him and asks if he's really human. Suddenly, Dryas backs away from him. Rio asks her if she found anything. Dryas tells him that she found more than one thing. She says there's a sleeping human-type spirit inside him. She tells him that this kind of spirit is extremely rare. These are spirits that can take on human form, like her. Dryas says that the sleeping spirit inside Rio is one of the 6 ancient spirits that vanished during the monster war over 1,000 years ago. Rio asks if having a spirit inside him will cause any problems. Shildora says there won't be any issues, but now they should treat him with much greater respect. After that, Orphea takes Rio to the house where he'll be staying in the village. It's up in a tree. There, he finds that Orphea, Sarah, and Alma have given Latifa new clothes and prepared food. The house is very spacious with a large bath, and Latifa is really happy. With the meal, they serve them rice and say it's a dish from a place called Yagumo. After eating, Ursula tells Rio that Sarah, Orphea, and Alma will live with them in the house to help with chores. It will also be good for Latifa to meet new people and make friends. Rio starts living with them and learning combat and spirit arts. He also learns blacksmithing from the dwarves. Latifa is really happy living there. A whole year passes. After that, the ambassador appears, riding a flying beast. He's with a boy who wants to join the Sky Black Lion unit. They go to the cave of a large monster. The ambassador enters the cave and steals the monster's egg, handing it to the boy to carry. Then they fly away again on the beast, but the monster whose egg they stole begins to chase after them. After a whole year of Latifa and Rio living in the Beastkin village, on the night of the Spirit Festival, the village elders decide to officially recognize Rio as an ally and accept Latifa as one of the villagers. Dryas also grants both Latifa and Rio her blessing. Everyone is extremely happy and they hold a grand feast to celebrate Rio and Latifa. During the celebration, Orphea and Sarah tell Rio that Latifa sees them as her sisters, but he still keeps some distance from them, and they want to be his friends too. Rio apologizes and says he's not very sociable, and asks if they'll let him be their friend. If they accept, it would make him very happy. Latifa has completely blended in and loves everyone there. Ursula tells Rio that Latifa has become an inseparable part of the village. Rio responds that he needs to tell Latifa soon that he's decided to leave the village. Then we switch to the ambassador and the boy with him. They're in a forest, and the ambassador tells the boy he's going to scout the area and will leave the griffin with him. He tells the boy that if he senses danger, he should escape on the griffin and the ambassador will find him. He gives the boy a red pill and says it's an ancient protective artifact, and that he'll be able to track him through it. The boy swallows the pill, no questions asked. The ambassador flies off and sees a flock of wyverns coming from afar for the egg, and he says they'll definitely take the bait. Later, Rio takes Latifa aside to tell her he's decided to leave the village. He asks if she likes life here, and Latifa says she loves everyone and that she's happy because he's with her too. He tells her he'll be leaving the village very soon, but Latifa gets really upset. Rio says she knows he was heading east from the beginning. Latifa tells him she wants to go with him, but Rio refuses and says he's going to a place he's never been before and that it could be very dangerous. Latifa yells at him, saying she doesn't want to be separated from him and runs off. Meanwhile, Sarah senses that someone has entered their territory using her power. She informs the village elders and goes with the warriors to see who it is. Back to the ambassador, we find out his plan was to have the boy escape with the egg, causing all the wyverns to chase him and leave their cave unguarded, so the ambassador could steal all the remaining eggs. He successfully steals them all. We return to Sarah and the warriors as they search the area to catch the intruders. It turns out the intruders are the griffin and the boy with the ambassador. Sarah warns the warriors not to attack first. She approaches and asks the boy to come with them calmly. She also asks him what he's doing here and if he has any of those eggs. The boy gets scared and pulls out a knife. Suddenly, he cuts the griffin's rope, jumps on it, and escapes with the egg. Yuzuma asks Sarah for permission to attack the boy, and Sarah grants it. She orders them to target the griffin. The boy flies toward the village, and the wyverns begin to chase him. Sarah is very surprised there's a whole wyvern swarm here. Alma says maybe they came because of the egg the boy is carrying. Sarah says they must not let the boy enter the village no matter what. She tells Orphea and Alma to focus on attacking the black wyvern because it's the strongest. Yuzuma and the others will handle the other types. She orders one of them to return and inform the village elders about what's happening. At the same time, the ambassador finishes stealing all the eggs and pulls a red pill from his pocket, the same kind he gave the boy, and crushes it. The boy dies instantly and falls off the griffin along with the egg. The black griffin chases after the egg. Sarah orders Alma to pursue the black wyvern and take care of it. Alma asks Sarah to lend her bond spirit so she can fight alongside her Afrida. Sarah agrees and hands over the bond spirit, and we discover that it's the same wolf that appeared in front of Rio the first time they met. Meanwhile, Latifa is walking alone in the forest, feeling upset and thinking about what Rio said about leaving. Suddenly, the egg falls in front of her, and then the black wyvern arrives too. Back in the village, everyone is fleeing. Rio asks why they're running. They tell him there's a black wyvern in the forest. Rio immediately thinks of Latifa being out there and rushes to save her. Back to Latifa, the wyvern attacks her, but Alma arrives and starts fighting it, protecting Latifah. Then Latifah and Alma team up to fight the Black Wyvern together. Rio arrives and apologizes to Latifah for being late. Latifah also apologizes for running away into the forest. Rio reassures Latifah and begins fighting the Wyvern, barehanded, without any weapons. Rio realizes the Wyvern's weak point is its mouth and attacks it with his power, managing to defeat it. Alma is amazed at how powerful Rio is and how easily he took down the Wyvern. Sarah and the others arrive. Sarah praises Alma for dealing with the Black Wyvern, but Alma tells Sarah that it was actually Rio who defeated the Black Wyvern all by himself without getting injured. They also discover that all the other Wyverns fled after seeing the Black Wyvern defeated. Sarah says Wyverns are cowardly and never fight anything they can't defeat, and they won thanks to Rio. She thanks him. Rio replies that he's their ally and friend, and it was his duty. The next day, Latifah apologizes to Rio. Rio tells her that he was the one at fault and that he should have told her in a better way. Latifah and Rio talk, and Latifah says she wants him to be her brother forever. Rio tells her she's his little sister and always will be. Latifah says she'll do her best and says she's sure they'll meet again. Rio tells her he's heading to the Yagumo region because that's where his family is from. It's the first time Rio has said anything about himself. Latifah tells him that she knows he might not believe her, but she used to be human and lived in a place called Japan. Then one day she woke up in this body. Rio tells her he believes her, because the same thing happened to him. He says he's Japanese too. Latifah says she'll keep waiting for him until he comes back. In the fall of year 998 of the sacred calendar, Rio had already been in the Yagumo region for 2 weeks, but he still couldn't find anything related to his mother or father. Everyone in the area had black hair like his, and when he arrived at a village, he asked 2 girls about the village chief. One of them said the chief was her grandmother and offered to take him to her. The girl took him to her grandmother, and there Rio introduced himself and said he came to ask about something important. Since his clothes looked different, the old woman asked if he was from another land, and Rio told her he had traveled through many regions. The old lady introduced herself as Bua and asked him why he had come. Rio said he was looking for someone who had come to this village because he had heard she knew most of the people in the region. Bua allowed him inside, and there Rio told her he'd heard his parents lived here 15 years ago. Bua asked him for their names, and Rio said they were Zen and Ayam. As soon as Bua heard the names, she was very surprised and ordered the girls who were with them to leave the room. Once they were gone, she asked Rio for more information. He told her he had heard that both were born in Yagumo, that his father died before he could meet him, and that he lived a peaceful and happy life with his mother until she passed away when he was 5. He said she had promised to take him to Yagumo once he grew up. He explained that he came looking for their homeland because he wanted to build them graves as the least he could do for them after they passed away. Bua told Rio that she knew both of them and that he really resembled them. When Rio asked how she knew them, she revealed that she was Zen's mother, his grandmother. She thanked him for coming all the way to Yagumo for his parents and told him they had already built them graves long ago. She took Rio to the graves of his mother and father and told him that they had left the village secretly a long time ago for reasons she couldn't yet share, but the time would come when Rio would learn everything. She told him that Zen and Ayam could never return, which is why they built those graves. She invited him to live with her in the village until the right time came to tell him the whole truth. She added that all her relatives had died, and only she and Rui were left, Rui being Rio's cousin, a 15-year-old girl. Rio said Rui was a year older than him. Bua was surprised because she had assumed he was older due to how polite he spoke. She said he was welcome to stay with them however he liked, but she would keep it a secret that he was her grandson for now, without giving a reason. She left him by the graves of his parents and walked away. At sunset, Rio returned to the house and had dinner with his grandmother and cousin Rui. The next morning, he woke up early and told his grandmother he'd help with the village chores and even prepare breakfast. Rio was very talented at cooking, and his grandmother was impressed by his skills. From them, he learned that both could use spirit arts, so he showed off a little and heated water using spirit arts. Rui told him even their grandmother couldn't do that, and Rio replied that it was easy for him and he could teach her if she liked. Later, Rui's friend Seo and her older brother Shin came by. Bua introduced them to Rio, and they all had breakfast together. Everyone loved Rio's cooking. After the meal, Bua asked Shin to take Rio to Dola's house to teach him how to hunt, since Rio had said he could hunt for them. Shin objected, saying Rio looked too physically weak for hunting. Bua told him Rio would be just fine, he was strong enough, having traveled to many lands at his age and being able to use spirit arts. Shin muttered that he could use spirit arts too, and Bua scolded him, saying Rio might be much stronger than him. Shin reluctantly agreed to take Rio hunting but told him not to get in his way. Seo apologized to Rio for her brother's behavior. As they left, Rui asked Seo why she spoke to Rio so respectfully. Seo said Rio seemed like someone from a noble family, on a different level, so she spoke to him with respect. Rio and Shin went to Dola's house to learn hunting, but Rio turned out to be much more skilled than Shin, impressing Dola. Dola praised Rio and even encouraged Shin to try and catch up. Together, Dola and Rio caught so much meat that the whole village could eat well. Shin was frustrated because he hadn't caught anything, only Dola and Rio had. When Rio looked at his hands and found them filthy, he decided to use spirit arts to build a bath and fill it with hot water. When Seo and Rui saw the bath, they were amazed, especially because there was soap. Shin was jealous of Rio because everyone admired him. Later, Bua told Rui that the tax agent would be coming very soon and said some rice would be going from their village to the capital. She asked Rio to guard the transport team, and Rio agreed. Suddenly, some villagers came running, saying Shin was in a fight with people from a nearby village. There, a man named John from the other village had harassed Rui and Seo. Shin was defending them and yelled at John for entering their village that way. John said he was staying as a guest of the village chief because his cart broke down on the way to the royal capital. Rui tried to calm Shin down since John was the son of the neighboring village chief and they didn't want trouble. But John provoked Shin, so Shin attacked him, but John easily blocked his attack. Then the village chief arrived and stopped the fight, giving John a guest house at the village edge to spend the night. On his way to the house, John ran into Rio and tried to kick him down. Rio didn't flinch, and instead, John tripped and fell due to how strong Rio's legs were. That night, as Seo and Rui were going to sleep, Rio gave them a protective charm to place in the corner of their room. They both thanked him and went to bed. Meanwhile, in the guest house, John was talking with his men, and it was revealed they had purposely broken the cart in this village just to harass Rui and Seo. The next day, the tax agent arrived. His name was Saga. Rio spent the day with him handling paperwork. Later that evening, Rio trained, and Rui and Seo asked when he started training with the sword. Rio told them he started because he liked a girl named Mi and wanted to protect her, but now he trains for himself. He said he didn't know where she was now or even if she still remembered him. Rui said that as long as they were both alive, they would definitely meet again one day. That night, John snuck into Rui and Seo's room and tried to assault Rui. But the charm Rio gave them lit up, and Rio rushed in to save them. The moment reminded him of the man who killed his mother. He beat John severely and almost killed him. Saga arrived just in time to stop Rio from finishing John. Saga promised to request punishment from the kingdom. Rio left and sat alone somewhere far away. There, he said he had always wanted to kill two people, John and the man who murdered his mother. He admitted that the desire for revenge had always lived inside him, but because of Haruto's memories, he had set it aside for a while. Now, he said he needed to keep his mother's revenge in front of him. The next day, John and his men were arrested. Rio apologized to his grandmother and the others for the chaos he caused, but Saga told him that if he were in Rio's place, he would have done exactly the same thing. Bua, Rui, and Seo thanked him for saving them and took him inside so they could all have breakfast together. After that, the villagers start preparing the caravan that will head to the capital with the rice, and Saga is also leaving the village on the same day. The village chief thanks Saga for his help in arresting John and his men, saying he'll take them to the capital to face justice, and that thanks to him, the caravan will reach the capital safely. Saga replies that he was just doing his duty, and Bua takes courage and says she trusts him and his kind nature, which is why she wants him to deliver a letter to his father, Lord Goki. But Saga explains that he'll be stopping by other villages on the way to the capital, so the delivery will be delayed. Then the farmers depart with the caravan toward the capital, and Seo, Shin, and Rio are with them. Along the way, Saga parts from the caravan to calculate taxes in another village, and after 3 days, they arrive in the capital Karasuki. As soon as they arrive at their lodging in the capital, the guard instructs everyone not to go out alone and to always be accompanied by someone who knows the capital to avoid getting lost. After that, the guard asks Rio and Shin to accompany him to hand over John and his men to the police, and they do. Then the guard takes Rio and Shin to eat a famous dish in the capital called kamuten. Rio tries the dish and likes it a lot. After the meal, when Rio and Shin are alone, Shin thanks Rio for saving Seo and says he wants to bring her to try the kamuten. It's clear how much he loves and cherishes his sister. The next day, Rio takes Seo out shopping. While there, he buys her a hairpin as a gift. On their way back, they see a thug kidnapping a girl, and the girl is screaming. Rio steps in and rescues her from the man. Shortly after, one of the girl's guards arrives, and Rio hands her over. Before any more guards show up, Rio quickly takes Seo and leaves to avoid drawing attention. Back at Lord Goki's mansion, Saga returns from his trip and is surprised to learn that someone tried to kidnap his sister. His father, Lord Goki, tells him what happened and how a young man saved her but then disappeared without a trace. Then Lord Goki asks Saga if there's any news, and Saga gives him the letter that Bua had sent. Goki opens the letter and starts reading, then suddenly looks shocked and asks Saga if he met a boy named Rio in the village. Saga replies yes. Goki immediately takes his son and rushes to the place where the rice caravan farmers are staying. As soon as the guard sees Rio, she confirms that he's the one who saved her lady from being kidnapped. They invite him to their home, and there, Lord Goki and his wife sit with him and introduce themselves. Goki says that long ago, he served Rio's mother, whose full name was Karasuki Ayam. Rio is completely shocked. Karasuki is the royal family name. Goki confirms his suspicion and tells him his mother was a princess. Then Lord Goki offers to first explain his connection with Rio's father, Zen. He says that 20 years ago, there was a war between the Karasuki kingdom and a neighboring kingdom called Rokuran. Zen, Ryo's father, volunteered to become a soldier. He was so talented that the king gave him the title of noble warrior. Later, Zen fought Goki in a duel, and Goki was impressed by his skills. He recommended Zen to become a guard for a royal family member. That person was Princess Ayam. Ayam and Zen fell in love. When the war ended, Rokuran sent a delegation to Karasuki to negotiate a truce. During the meeting, the Prince of Rokuran saw Princess Ayam and became infatuated with her. He sent a servant to kidnap her, but Zen stepped in at the last moment, protected Ayam, and killed the servant. The Prince of Rokuran then made two demands for the truce. First, a political marriage with Ayam. Second, the execution of Zen. But the king disliked the situation, so he secretly arranged for Ayam and Zen to flee the kingdom. Since then, no one heard anything about them until Bua sent her letter. Goki also says he's sure Ryo is their son. He looks exactly like them. Afterward, Lord Goki asks Ryo to meet the king and queen, and the next day, they go to the royal palace. There, Ryo meets his grandfather and grandmother and speaks to them very formally. The king tells him he wants his grandson to speak less formally, and the queen says he looks a lot like Ayam. Ryo notices that his grandmother also looks very much like his mother. They sit down, and the king asks Ryo about Ayam and Zen. Ryo simply says they both died. The king then asks how they lived and how they died. Ryo explains that his father died when he was very young, so he knows little about him. Then he lived with his mother, who always smiled and never showed any sadness. They weren't wealthy, but they were happy. When Ryo was 5, his mother died. The king asks how Ayam died, and Ryo says it would be painful for the king to hear the details, but the king insists. Ryo explains that his mother was murdered, not a natural death. He says there was an adventurer named Lucius who used to work with Zen. After Zen died, Lucius helped Ayam and Ryo a lot. But one day, Ayam went out and told Ryo not to open the door for strangers. Lucius came, and Ryo opened the door. Lucius beat him and gave him something that made him lose consciousness. When Ayam returned, Lucius killed her in front of Ryo. That was Ryo's last memory of his mother. The king and queen begin crying. The queen asks Ryo how he lived all those years. Ryo says after his mother died, he woke up in the slums. He lived there until he was 7. Then an incident happened where he saved a member of the royal family, and the king rewarded him by allowing him to attend the Royal Academy. He says he faced a lot of harassment there, but there were also people who treated him kindly and helped him live happily. He stayed in the academy until he was 12, and then he left to visit Yagumo. The king asks Ryo if he wants revenge for his mother. Ryo says Lucius is the only man he'll never be able to forgive. He says he lived solely to avenge his mother and that he thought a lot about how his mother wouldn't want him to take revenge. But even so, if he ever meets Lucius, he will kill him with his own hands. Ryo remains firm in his decision, even though his grandfather tells him that revenge is hell. Then his grandfather says he wants Ryo to fight Goki, because if Ryo truly wants to kill Lucius, he must be strong. There's a high possibility Lucius also killed Zen and betrayed him. If that's true, Lucius must be very powerful. Ryo and Goki fight, and Goki is amazed by Ryo's skill and physical ability. Ryo is so strong that Goki, the strongest warrior in the Karasuki kingdom and surrounding lands, can only block Ryo's attacks. In the end, Ryo defeats Goki with ease. After that, Ryo asks the king and queen for permission to return to Bua's village and also asks if he can tell his cousin about his lineage. His grandfather trusts his decision and grants him permission. Ryo returns to the village, and at night, they tell Ruri everything from A to Z, but Ruri doesn't believe it, especially how a guy from a village could meet a princess in the first place. But Bwaya tells her that Zen fought in the war and the king gave him the title of noble warrior, so Ruri starts to believe it, and then suddenly she bows to Ryo and apologizes for speaking to someone from the royal family without proper respect. But Ryo lifts Ruri up and tells her that his mother Ayam was from the royal family, but he's not, and he wants her to talk to him normally without all the formal speech. But Ruri also tells him that he's speaking to her formally, and she'd like him to talk normally because they've become close, and they both agree to speak casually with each other. After that, Ryo tells his grandmother and Ruri that next year he'll leave the village because there's a place he must go to. Ruri gets upset that he'll leave, and his grandmother tells him he's a member of the village and can come back anytime he wants. Ruri asks him if he's leaving because someone is waiting for him, so Ryo tells them about Latifa and says that she considers him her big brother. The next day, Ryo goes to greet all the villagers after returning, and they all notice that he talks to Ruri casually without formal speech, so they're surprised. But Ruri says she's the one who asked him to do that. They don't tell anyone that he's her cousin and part of the royal family, and all the girls in the village are jealous of Ruri because she's the only one close to Ryo. After that, Ryo continues his life in the village and teaches them many things to make their lives easier. He also builds them a water wheel and helps them plan the crops. One day, during the rice seedling planting, he's the supervisor, and Seo is late in planting, so he goes to help her, but she says she's fine and can manage. Then Ryo tells her he wants her to supervise the things he taught the villagers so they can keep doing them properly after he leaves. So Seo asks him if he's going to leave the village, and he says he'll leave in the autumn after the rice harvest. Seo asks if he'll visit them regularly, but Ryo says he'll definitely come back, but not regularly, and he'll be gone for a long time. Seo gets sad that he'll leave and starts crying, but says dust got into her eye. At night, Shin sees Seo crying hard at home, so he asks if Rio upset her, but Seo tells Rio she's crying because he's leaving. Shin can't bear to see his sister cry, so he goes in front of Rio's house and begs him not to leave the village, but Seo comes and takes him back home. Months pass during the rice growing, and Seo trains very hard, and no one knows why she's training so much. At the harvest festival, the village chief invites Mr. Gookie to attend the festival with them. Gookie and his wife attend and celebrate with the villagers, and Rio cooks them kamudon. Then Seo asks Rio to come with her because she wants to talk to him about something. When they're alone, Seo confesses her love to Rio, but Rio replies and apologizes, saying he's sorry but can't return her feelings. Seo asks if the reason is that he's leaving the village. Rio says that's one of the reasons, so Seo tells him to take her with him and that she trained herself in spirit arts during all those months, and if he takes her with him, she won't hold him back. But Rio apologizes again and says he can't accept her feelings, and he leaves her. Then Shin comes to comfort her. Rio says goodbye to all the villagers, and the next day he wakes up very early and says goodbye to his grandmother and Ruri, and he thanks them a lot for all the time he spent with them. But Seo doesn't come to say goodbye. Rio leaves, but at the village gate, he finds Seo waiting for him. She greets him and says goodbye, and Rio leaves feeling better. Then Rio flies and returns to the wildlands where the demi-humans and the world tree are. Before entering the village, he meets Latifa and Orphea, and Latifa runs to him, having grown since the last time he saw her. After that, Rio sits with the village elders and tells them everything about his grandmother and his cousin. He tells Latifa that he said he has a little sister, and they're excited to meet her. They ask him how long he'll stay in the village this time, and Rio says he plans to stay for a few months. Latifa is sad that he'll leave again, but he promises her he'll come visit again and won't be gone as long as last time. The elders ask him if he needs anything for his journey. Rio says he has everything he needs but has an idea he'd like to suggest. He says he's thinking of building a house and storing it in the space-time bracelet so he can have a private house anywhere. The village elders like the idea and say that in that case, he'll need a house without any restrictions, and that they'll need spirit arts to make it. They say Rio can rely on Dominic for this, and he'll build the house so Rio can spend more time with Latifa. Then Rio goes to greet Alma, Sarah, and Orphea, and they tell him he's grown and gotten much taller than the first time they saw him, and they're happy he's back. The next day, the whole village is shaken by Rio's scream when he wakes up, and Alma, Sarah, Orphea, and Latifa all rush to his room to see what happened and check if he's okay. There, they find Rio beside a strange girl, and he doesn't know who she is. Everyone present is confused and doesn't understand why Rio screamed. They keep asking him who she is, but Rio himself doesn't know. Sarah tries to calm them down, but she also ends up asking who the girl is. Then the girl finally opens her eyes, and Rio asks her, "Who are you?" The girl answers and tells him that she is the spirit Haruto made a contract with and that she was living inside him and has now emerged. At that moment, everyone calms down because they finally know who she is, and Rio remembers what Dorius, the spirit of the world tree, told him, that there's a great spirit inside him. After that, Rio starts asking the spirit some questions, and his first question is how they even formed a contract. But the spirit replies, saying, "I don't know." So Rio asks her, "Were you the one who appeared to me when I was a child and taught me spirit arts or not?" And the spirit replies again, "I don't know either." Then Rio asks again, "You were asleep inside me all this time, so why did you suddenly appear now?" This time, the spirit replies, "I don't know either." So Rio decides to direct his questions to someone else and asks Orphea if what's happening is normal when a contracted spirit appears. But Sarah responds and says that they contract with non-human spirits that don't have physical forms, and this is a human spirit, so that's why she doesn't know anything about what's happening. Rio goes back to ask the spirit, "What's your name then?" But this time, the spirit gives a slightly longer answer and says, "I don't know my name either, and since you've brought up the topic of names, you can name me if you like." Rio feels uneasy about the idea of naming her and asks her why him specifically. The spirit replies, "Because I was created for you, Haruto." At that moment, Orphea notices that the spirit keeps calling Rio Haruto, so she asks him why. But Latifa realizes that must have been his name in Japan before he came to this world, and Rio hesitates a bit and tells Orphea that he'll explain later. Then Rio turns to the spirit, just about to tell her to call him Rio, but she responds first and says that she knows he is Rio. She starts speaking to him telepathically and tells him that she knows everything about him. She asks him what name he would like her to call him by, and he replies telepathically that she can call him by whatever name she likes. After that, Rio asks the spirit to give him some time to find her a suitable name. Then the girls suggest that he should present the matter of the spirit to the village elders and Lady Dorius. Since Dorius is also a human spirit, she must have information that can help both the spirit and Rio. Then Rio suggests to the spirit that she should come with him so they can consult the village elders. The spirit stands up, and a very bright and warm light shines from her. At that moment, Rio says he'll name her Aisha. Then Sarah says that in the old village language, the name Aisha means the warm spring or the beautiful spring. Rio tells Aisha that when he saw the light coming from her, he felt the name suited her very well. Aisha is happy and tells him that she likes the name and says her name is similar to his. They both feel warm, and here she means the name Haruto, since in Japanese it means summer. Everyone welcomes the great spirit Aisha. After that, Rio and Aisha go to the village elders and tell them everything, and no one knows why Aisha lost her memory. Then the great spirit Dorius also arrives and meets Aisha and greets her. She tells them that normally spirits remember all their memories, so Dorius asks Aisha, "What kind of spirit were you?" Aisha says she's the spirit who made a contract with Haruto. Everyone is surprised and wonders who Haruto is. Haruto gets flustered, then says that in the Straw region, he is wanted by the law. So he uses the name Haruto there so no one recognizes him. Then Dorius asks Aisha, "Which of the 4 elements can you use?" Aisha replies that she can use all of them. Everyone is shocked that she can use spirit arts with all elements. Then Dorius suggests that Rio should spar with Aisha. She says that she's never heard of a human spirit who can master all the elements, and they need to understand the extent of Aisha's power, especially Rio. Rio picks up a stone and tells Aisha that he'll throw it on the ground, and once it touches the ground, the battle will begin. The moment the stone touches the ground, Aisha launches herself with incredible speed. Aisha is extremely fast, and everyone is shocked by her movements. She's so skilled that she can predict Rio's moves. Rio distances himself because he can't land a hit on her. Then he launches a spirit arts attack at her, but Aisha disappears in an instant, and everyone is shocked how she vanished. Dorius explains to them that she shifted herself into her spirit form. Aisha actually uses all the elements in her fight with Rio, and both Rio and Aisha get so carried away in the fight that they unleash their power to a terrifying degree, until Dorius orders them to stop immediately. At that moment, both of them stop the fight instantly. Rio regains himself and apologizes for getting carried away. Dorius says that if they had continued, they would have destroyed the village. Everyone becomes certain that Aisha wasn't lying when she said she could use all the elements, and they also say that the power she used in the battle is nothing compared to her true strength. But Dorius tells them that even so, she's not safe as a spirit, and she offers to teach her everything about spirits. The village elders welcome the great spirit Aisha. Aisha starts taking lessons about spirits from Dorius and trains with Rio, and the two of them spend a lot of time together. Time passes, and Dominic finally finishes the house that Rio needs, and Rio says he'll cook for all of them tonight as a token of gratitude since he's leaving the day after tomorrow. Latifa gets sad but doesn't show it. But Sarah notices that Latifa isn't okay and talks to Rio about spending some time with her before he leaves, especially since he spent most of his time here training with Aisha. So Latifa goes to Rio to spend some time with him, and they make up and talk about the name Haruto and realize that they were both in the same bus accident. The next day, Rio says goodbye to the village elders, and they give him a teleportation tool that allows him to return to the village anytime he wants. But the tool only works one way, meaning it'll bring him back to the village, but if he wants to go back to where he was before, he won't be able to. They also gift him a magical tool that can change his hair color so he can disguise himself in the Straw region since he's wanted by the authorities there. Then Rio and Aisha head towards the Straw region, but Rio says there's someone he wants to visit first. Aisha responds, "Celia, right?" And Rio says yes, and adds that he only sent her one letter since he left. Then we go to Celia and she's holding Rio's letter, and it's clear she hasn't forgotten him at all. But suddenly, Royal Guard Charles enters, and we learn that the two are engaged and will be married soon, and it's clear Celia can't stand him. Rio arrives at the royal capital of the Beltram Kingdom in the year 1000 of the Holy Era, and it's been 9 years since he first met Celia. The first thing Rio does is change his hair color so he doesn't draw attention. The city is very crowded, so he asks the owner of a bakery about the reason, and she tells him that today is the wedding of a noble. Then Rio tells Aisha to rest while he goes to see Celia and comes back. But Aisha insists on going with him and says she can help as a spirit. When Rio reaches the academy and enters Celia's office, he finds it completely empty and is confused about where Celia went. So they enter another professor's office, and there, Celia controls the professor and makes him answer all of Rio's questions. Rio asks him where Celia is, and the professor says she left the academy. Rio asks why she left, and the professor replies, "Because of the wedding." Rio then asks, "Whose wedding?" The professor answers, "Celia and Charles Arbor, of course." Rio is extremely shocked by the fact that Celia is going to marry Charles, and the professor responds saying that their marriage is a political one in the first place. He explains that the Beltram kingdom was defeated by the Proxia kingdom, and thanks to the Arbor family, Charles's father, Beltram was able to enter peace negotiations. And to further strengthen the Arbor family's political stance, they decided to form an alliance with Count Claire's family, Celia's father, which makes this a political marriage. Then Aisha asks Rio what he plans to do, and he says he'll go ask Celia himself before the wedding whether she truly wants to get married or not. But the problem is that Celia is in the castle, and the castle's defenses are much stronger than the academy's, which makes entering a lot harder. So Aisha tells him that she'll shift into her spirit form and go inside, and tells him not to worry because she knows what Celia looks like. Inside the castle, Count Claire is having dinner with Charles and Celia, and it's obvious he can't stand Charles. Charles talks to him arrogantly and keeps threatening that the marriage must happen or else he could be arrested as a traitor at any time. Count Claire is being forced into this marriage because he has no other option. Celia is very sad and clearly can't stand Charles either. Then Aisha contacts Rio telepathically and tells him she located Celia's exact location and gives him the info. After dinner, Celia heads to her room, feeling upset that she hasn't seen her father in so long, and when she finally sees him, Charles is with them and there's no time for them alone as father and daughter. Celia is in her room trying to convince herself to marry Charles. She remembers Rio and takes out his letter and realizes her feelings for him, but says to herself that she'll belong to another man, so she brings the letter close to the fire to burn it. But at that moment, Celia hears a sound, hides the letter behind her back, and starts calling out to ask if someone is there. Suddenly, Rio enters the room, and at first Celia doesn't recognize him because he changed his hair color. But when he changes it back to black, she immediately recognizes him and runs to hug him. They talk for a while, and then Rio asks Celia if she's getting married. She says her wedding to Charles is tomorrow, and Rio clearly shows that he's upset by the idea of her marrying Charles in particular. Celia tries to act like she chose Charles willingly, saying that she's at the age for marriage, and Charles is kind and treats women well, so why not? But Rio isn't convinced, and tells her to say if she's being forced. Celia loses her composure and yells at him, asking, if what you're saying is true, what can you even do? Will you marry me? Will you stop everything and take me away from here? Will you keep me by your side forever? Rio is stunned by the questions, but Celia suddenly laughs and lowers her voice, telling Rio she was just joking, and asks him to leave quickly and not come to the wedding because that would be too embarrassing. When Rio hesitates to leave, Celia jokes again and says she'll scream if he doesn't go. She pushes him out of the room and tells him he has to leave before she counts to 20. And indeed, when Celia opens the door afterward, she finds that he's already gone. The next day at the wedding, the ambassador arrives and from his conversation with Charles, it becomes clear that Charles is a traitor. Celia is getting ready and looks absolutely beautiful. Then Charles arrives to take her and is mesmerized by how she looks in the dress. But even in his amazement, he doesn't forget to introduce Celia to his 4 wives. Yes, Charles is married to many women, and shortly after, he leaves his wives with Celia and walks away. They immediately start attacking her with all the spiteful tactics co-wives use. They begin telling her that before the marriage, her status was higher than all of them, but after marriage, she'll be lower than every one of them. Celia bows to them and agrees with what they say, treating them with great respect. Then a maid comes and tells Celia that Princess Christina has arrived and wants to greet her. Celia gives the order to let the princess in immediately, which angers Charles's wives. How can she be giving orders when she's the lowest ranked here? Celia defends herself, saying that it's Princess Christina and she can't be left waiting outside for long. If that happened, it could cause problems for Charles. Princess Christina enters and treats Charles's wives with extreme coldness and ignores them. Then she embarrasses them all and orders them to leave because she wants to speak to Celia alone. Christina keeps talking to Celia until Celia finally laughs a little. Christina tells her she's glad she laughed at last, and says that back in school, Celia was her role model and that she always loved Celia's smile. Then Christina breaks down and tells Celia she's sorry because the king's weakness is the reason she's being forced into this marriage. But Celia tells her the same thing she told Rio, that she's marrying Charles of her own free will. Christina apologizes again. Then the wedding procession begins, and everyone gathers to watch the ceremony and see the bride of the noble Charles. Celia looks stunning in white, so much so that people start calling her the Silver Bride. Celia keeps waving and greeting the people, trying her best not to show her sadness. She keeps telling herself that she's just a doll with no emotions, until suddenly, she hears a voice whisper in her ear. It's Aishia, telling her to look to her right. And when Celia looks carefully to her right as the voice said, she sees a man with gray hair. It's Rio. At that moment, Celia can't hold herself together and says in her mind that she didn't want Rio to see her in this situation. Celia breaks down in tears, and Charles is confused and keeps asking what's wrong. But Celia doesn't know what to say to him. She finally tells him she doesn't know what's wrong with her feelings. Charles, the idiot, thinks she's crying from happiness and that she's madly in love with him and can't wait to marry him. The procession reaches the place where the wedding ceremony will take place, and just as Charles reaches out his hand to help the bride down, someone bursts into the ceremony. You and I know who, and that person is Rio, who has changed his hair so no one recognizes him. The soldiers try to stop him, but he defeats them, and then they order the mages to attack him too, but he also defeats them easily. Next, the night squad stands in his way, and Celia starts getting worried about him. Charles thinks she's scared of Rio, so he reassures her, saying these are the kingdom's best warriors and to consider it an entertaining show before the wedding. He barely finishes his sentence before Rio already defeats them and knocks Charles down himself. Celia doesn't understand what's going on. Rio grabs her, pulls out a dagger, and pretends to take her hostage, then starts speaking to her telepathically. He explains that he's speaking directly to her mind and that if she wants to reply, she should think in her head and he'll hear her. Rio keeps Charles under his foot and tells him he's ruining the wedding to get revenge. To sell the act, he tells Charles he'll crush his skull under his foot. Celia gets scared that he might actually kill someone, but Rio reassures her that he has no intention of killing anyone and that what he's saying is just an act. Rio asks Celia again if this marriage is truly of her own free will. Celia insists on the same answer she gave him before, saying she agreed to the marriage willingly. Rio asks her if she was threatened by the Arbor family, but Celia doesn't reply. Rio tells her he can stop the entire wedding if she wants and says that she means a lot to him, that he owes her a lot, and he doesn't want to leave her in a situation like this without helping. He remembers how he couldn't save his mother when he was a child and says there's still time to help her and that if he doesn't, he'll regret it for the rest of his life. Rio continues, telling her that her dignity will be crushed in the future if she goes through with the wedding, and that he can't stand by and watch that happen. He pressures her again and asks if this marriage will make her happy. Celia replies that if she puts her feelings first, it will cause problems for everyone around her. Rio responds that he'll help her achieve what she wants and begs her not to give up. Celia asks what he'll do if she says she doesn't want to go through with the wedding. Rio says he'll take her away from here right now, and they'll escape far away. That way, no one will suspect Count Claire, and he won't face any trouble. Celia finally gives in and tells him she wants him to take her away from here. At that moment, Rio declares in front of everyone that he's kidnapping the bride to get revenge on Charles. He lifts her up and runs off, and Celia plays along with the act, screaming and calling for Charles. Rio escapes the guards easily because of the foolish instructions Charles gives them. He also blocks all their magic attacks with no effort. The ambassador is present at the ceremony and notices that Rio is using spirit arts, not magic, and realizes that this is the same Rio he saw in the forest before, saying to himself that Rio has grown and become much stronger. The ambassador tests Rio's power by launching a strong attack at him, but Rio dodges it easily, so the ambassador knows Rio's level has increased dramatically. Rio escapes while carrying Celia and moves incredibly fast. The entire kingdom is literally chasing him. Celia is scared at first because of how fast he's going, but then she gets used to it. Rio contacts Aisha telepathically and agrees to drop into a side alley to continue the plan. Celia doesn't know who he's talking to, so Rio tells her it's part of his plan and that he's not alone. Someone is helping him. Rio drops into a side alley where Aisha appears and takes Celia from him. Rio confirms to her to follow the plan as agreed. Rio says he'll act as a decoy to buy them time, and Aisha will use that time to take Celia out of the kingdom. Then he promises Celia that he'll catch up and meet them again. He tries to explain who Aisha is to Celia, but Aisha says there's no time and that she'll explain everything to Celia herself during their escape. Rio returns to act as the decoy, and indeed, everyone starts chasing him. But when they realize Celia is no longer with him, they send a signal to call in reinforcements to search for her. Since Celia is no longer with him, they begin attacking him with full force. But Rio manages to dodge all the attacks. Then he begins fighting the Knight Squad with his bare hands, but since they're using swords, it's not enough. So he pulls out knives, and the knives work great. He defeats the knights easily, making sure not to kill anyone. After that, Alfred, the strongest knight in the kingdom, arrives and starts dueling with Rio. Rio uses his knives, and Alfred uses his sword. Alfred is very strong enough that Rio struggles to block his attacks. But Rio isn't weak either and proves to be a strong match for Alfred. After a bit of fighting, Alfred uses a powerful spell, and even Rio gets scared by its power. But when the dust from the strike clears, Rio is nowhere to be seen, and they think the hit got him and there's nothing left of him due to the power of the blow. But Alfred isn't sure because he didn't feel his sword hitting Rio at all. Outside the kingdom, Celia and Aisha are waiting for Rio, and eventually he arrives, totally beat up, and Celia runs to him asking if he's okay. Rio reassures her, but Aisha senses that something dangerous is about to happen. Indeed, a lot of multicolored lightning strikes the ground. Aisha runs to Rio and begs him to protect them. Then we discover that this lightning came from the teleportation of people from Haruto's world in Japan into this world. There are 4 people from Haruto's world, from Japan, and they get kidnapped by bandits. But Rio hears Aisha and actually goes and rescues them. There, he finds that one of the kidnapped people is Michan, the girl Haruto used to love, and it seems their meeting was